SCP-49, The Doctor of Death. Part 1, The Unknown Patient. June 12, 2007, 3:15 a.m. Texas, USA. The sound of the engine was the only noise that echoed on the desolate, foggy road. The New Dawn task force of the SCP Foundation was driving to a remote laboratory in southwestern Texas. There had been a recent incident involving an anomalous entity, prompting the decision to launch an operational mission. This was a crucial step in studying SCP-49, known as the Doctor of Death. Anyone who had encountered it never remained the same. James Payson, the senior researcher leading the team, reviewed the latest logs. They were unsettling, unexplained conditions of patients, distorted reports of surgical procedures that made no sense. All evidence pointed to SCP-49, which had likely reactivated. Log Entry 1, Patient 1. Date, June 7, 2007. Location, SCP-49, Underground Facility. As soon as we arrived, we found that SCP-49 had activated and had likely performed several treatment procedures on our agents. None of them survived after these procedures. I've reviewed the logs. The patients who fell under its care were dead. Then, they were brought back to life, but not as ordinary people. They became something else. Payson shut his eyes, recalling the horrific scene from the previous day. Inside the facility, after the doctor attempted his operation on several agents, they began to change. They turned into mechanical husks, losing their humanity. There was nothing left but empty shells that moved like puppets. We need to stop this, Payson thought, tapping a key on his laptop. The logs all pointed to one thing. SCP-49 didn't just want to treat, it wanted to transform people into its ideal form, and it was willing to kill to achieve that goal. All positions, ready up, came a voice over the headset. The vehicle finally stopped in front of a massive concrete wall, hiding the entrance to the old underground base. This wasn't just about the entity anymore, it was also about retrieving several agents who needed immediate attention. No one had any desire to face SCP-49 in person, but orders were orders. Part 2, Entering the Catacombs. Payson and his team, equipped with scientific instruments and standard protective gear, stepped onto the cold ground. The fog hung low in the air, making them feel vulnerable, and the piercing wind creaked through their masks as if warning them of what awaited. "Stick together, no hesitation," Payson ordered, casting a glance over his team. They advanced deeper into the building, the silence growing heavier with each step. After passing through several rooms, they reached the checkpoint. This was the moment the Foundation had gathered all available data on SCP-49, but the further they went, the more they realized the collected information did little to help them fully understand the nature of this entity. "This place," muttered one of the team members, Researcher Hughes, his voice barely audible. "It's nothing like a typical lab. Everything feels like an ancient medical facility." It was a chilling observation. Old wooden furniture, raised platforms for surgical procedures, and even an old, rusted cloth reel stood in the rooms, resembling an ancient clinic more than a modern scientific station. And there, in the middle of one of the rooms, stood SCP-49. It was motionless, its expression hidden behind a pale, featureless mask, its hands cluttered with surgical tools, none of which appeared to have been used. "Doctor," it said, its voice muffled but filled with a disturbing calm. "I have been expecting you. I have new patients for you. You won't want to miss this." The researchers exchanged glances, but Payson was ready. He knew their main objective was to collect data and avoid direct interaction with the entity. "We're here to study you, SCP-49, he said, raising his hands to show peaceful intent. "We don't intend to be your patients." SCP-49 frowned, his empty gaze focused on them. "This is not your decision. All of you are ill, and I must treat you. This is my duty. My oath." He raised one of his tools, heavy and metallic, and gestured to each of the agents. "Soon, you will all be under my care. All of you will be healthy." If Payson hadn't made his move, he might never have understood the true nature of this treatment. He glanced at the monitor in another room, noticing a troubling signal. Someone on his team had already ceased to be what they seemed. Part 3. The Operation. Every movement of SCP-49 was precise, and his tools left no room for doubt. Payson and his team struggled to stay calm, but they all felt the same growing unease. They had passed the point of no return. Their mission was no longer just about collecting data, it was about survival. "It's ready," whispered Payson, signaling his team to retreat. But SCP-49 had already begun. He took a steel instrument, resembling a scalpel, and addressed the agents once more. "It will be quick and painless, I promise." And with that, he moved toward one of the agents. Each of the researchers tried to remain detached, but the atmosphere was suffocating. They watched as SCP-49 made movements that seemed almost ceremonial, positioning his tools in a way that suggested an eerie level of familiarity. And then it happened. The agent who was on the operating table began to change. No, it wasn't just a normal, fatal disfiguration. This was a transformation. The agent's body began twisting and distorting into something unrecognizable, mechanical, unnatural, a perverse mockery of life. Payson's eyes flicked to the other monitors, and his face went pale. "This can't be," he thought. But it was real. What was happening before them wasn't human. His team members were becoming something else, becoming part of SCP-49's twisted vision of health. Part 4. Consequences. SCP-49's actions unfolded like the gears of a precise machine. Each agent that fell into his hands was transformed into something else, something far from human. The bodies became heavy, empty shells that still moved, but without a soul. And in the room, it grew increasingly quiet as the last sounds of life faded. Those who remained alive felt their very souls slipping away. One agent, still breathing, reached out to Payson, seeking help, but Payson knew it was too late. He had to leave, and he had to leave now. As he began to signal the retreat, he felt an overwhelming cold wash over him. Something deep inside him told him that it was already too late. No one could escape this nightmare. Part 5. The Final Treatment. The situation worsened with every passing second. Payson stood there, overwhelmed with fear and despair, but he knew he couldn't just abandon his people. The last agent who hadn't yet been transformed was still moving slowly. However, it was clear his time was running out. But the most terrifying thing was that Payson himself began to feel something change within him, as if his mind were slipping away, as if he, too, was becoming part of this nightmare. He saw it all, but could do nothing to stop it. "You can't leave me. I will heal you," SCP-49 murmured from behind him, and Payson turned to face the entity. Its mask reflected the faint light, and its words were no longer just a request, they were a mantra, a conviction that seeped into every movement. "Doctor, I don't want your treatment. I don't want to be your patient," Payson shouted, but his voice sounded